With the new Solomon Islands map launching a little bit earlier than we expected, I spent the vast majority of yesterday just playing Battlefield 5 on the brand new map solely, and that's given me plenty of time to pick up on some of the smaller, potentially more hidden details that DICE has added to the map. It's always something that I appreciate from the DICE team, that they go the extra mile with their new content to make it stand out and to give it just a little bit more life. Now, I've got several details here that you might have missed, or some that you might know about, and there's even a couple of Easter eggs in here as well. First of all then, we might as well get the big one out of the way: Crocodiles on Solomon Islands. According to developer Nicholas Ostrand, the crocodile is his latest creation, and his name is Max. You might remember that back with the launch of the Pacific Theater Chapter 5, several new animals were spotted on the Pacific Storm map. We had sharks and turtles swimming in the shallow waters mixed in with various tropical fish, and then there was a larger manta ray out in open water. Now, here on Solomon Islands, you can find the crocodile circling the map through the rivers that connect all the different capture points together. I first found it right in the middle of the map, close to the sea flag on Conquest, but other people have found it in different locations. It kind of does a loop of a certain area of the map wherever the river is deep enough. When I first spotted it, I dived right into the water next to it, and it ended up biting me, so that way it performs similarly to the sharks on Pacific Storm. They will hurt you if you get too close, but at this point, unless you're lower than half health, I don't think they're going to kill you. I really appreciate these kind of Easter eggs. It would be cool to just see these things swimming around, but the fact that they then interact with you and sort of warn you to go away, that just shows the extra mile that DICE went here. Next up is the inclusion of planes on Solomon Islands, but just not in the way that you might really expect. DICE stated before the launch of the map that planes would not be making an appearance here. Instead, the battles would be fought firmly on the ground between infantry soldiers, light vehicles, and tanks, but you can still find planes flying through the sky. These planes are AI controlled, and they fly across the map every now and again. They sort of become part of the backdrop, and they help create a slightly better atmosphere. But what surprised me, however, is that the planes themselves, although not being flown by real players or being planes that can be entered by real players, they show up on the minimap as they fly overhead. And that kind of leads me to think that these planes might well be part of the vehicle pool of the map. DICE has previously told players that maps have vehicle limits. There's a maximum amount of vehicles that can be present at any one time, and that's mainly due to memory constraints. So perhaps due to the lack of air vehicles on Solomon Islands, there was some space in that memory pool to add some planes. Or maybe it was purely to show their icons on the minimap when they fly over. Seems like a lot of work just for that, so of course this could be completely unintentional, but it is something that happens. And then secondly, although this isn't so much a hidden detail because it sits right on the D flag capture point in Conquest, there is another plane on the map. It's a crashed American transport plane that's split in half. This ends up creating a little bit of cover around the D flag point that you can actually hide behind and around, and it's fairly important since the capture zone of the flag is relatively small, and you'll also notice a bunch of red material hanging from the trees. Those are parachutes from American cargo drops. Thanks to Flakfire for that bit of information. Solomon Islands also includes a couple of extensions to previously known systems. We have a couple of new fortifications to tell you about here. First of all, the pontoon bridges. These are placed around the map over the rivers, and they can be used as a quick transport route instead of having to swim through it. They build really quickly, and if they're built at the start of rounds, they can make crossing rivers much faster than swimming. Although when you're building them, you are kind of out in the open, so make sure you're not being looked at by a recon player. Plus, you get to avoid Max the Crocodile if you use one of these pontoon bridges. They do break very easily, however. You only really need a dinghy boat to hit them at full speed, or you just need to fire an RPG at them and they will shatter into pieces. But nonetheless, they do provide infantry some quicker options for crossing the rivers, and people won't be slowed down in shallower places where swimming isn't possible either. And then the other new fortification is these tank stoppers that are made from log piles. These can be found all over the map in strategic positions, and they will stop tanks and other vehicles like transport cars from getting where they want to go. There's a really good choke point around the D flag actually, where a few of these can be built, and then they can be bolstered with barbed wire as well, so they're going to slow down infantry soldiers. These are essentially the same fortification as the concrete squares on Pacific Storm and the Dragon's Teeth that you can find on the beaches of Iwo Jima, but they've been themed to fit in with the jungle environment. This next feature you might have noticed in passing, but when the rainy weather hits the map, a massive rainbow opens up above the sky in the hills in the distance. And if you look more closely, you can actually see a very heavy rainstorm that rages alongside of it. Since this is one of the more obvious features of the map, it's quite similar to the lightning on Pacific Storm, it's pretty much just a normal weather change. It does happen quite a lot more often. But sometimes, you can actually see more AI planes in the distance. They start fighting and shooting one another, which is pretty cool. And that reminds me of the massive AI battle that DICE implemented on the beaches of Iwo Jima, outside that normal play zone. Next on the list is something sure to make the Battlefield 5 subreddit happy. We have brand new Japanese supply trucks on Solomon Islands. If you weren't aware, a few disgruntled posts went live on the subreddit when the Pacific launched that showcased German transport trucks being used as props on the Pacific maps, which of course makes no historically accurate sense. Personally, I could care a lot less about a static truck that doesn't do anything on the map at all besides provide me some cover, but it seems that DICE did hear the calls for these things to be changed, and they've answered that call here on Solomon Islands. You can find these majestic beasts all over the map in different locations, providing you the same cover that the German trucks do on other Pacific maps. But nonetheless, this is a hidden feature because most people wouldn't even have noticed the difference between a Japanese and a German truck. Something else for Solomon Islands I also spotted a couple of times actually, a random bombing explosion caused by the AI planes that fly over the map. Now this doesn't appear to happen all of the time or at a specific point during the round, but the clip you're watching now was captured with only about 30 or so tickets left during a round of Conquest. This bombing is kind of reminiscent to the same thing that happens on Operation Underground, where planes flying overhead, they bomb the city across the river. This time, however, because of the lush green surroundings, I'd say it's much easier to see the explosion, and it contrasts really nicely, so if you're nearby to it, then you are going to notice it. I spotted it the other day whilst playing, but I genuinely thought that it was a misguided JB-2 rocket from the Americans, so maybe someone trying to call it in on the E point during Conquest, but they just sort of missed the mark. But no, apparently, this is the random bombing of the planes flying over, and it doesn't just happen in that place, it can happen at different points on the outskirts of the map. This clip here, that I recorded whilst I was talking about the Japanese trucks, in the top right corner, you can see the planes dropping bombs, and the explosion going off over there as well. Something a little bit more obvious now, there are two waterfalls on the Solomon Islands map. One of them is smaller and one of them is larger, both of them deep in the jungle close to the Japanese spawn on the map. The larger one, that sits right beside the D capture point and it incorporates a bridge for vehicles to cross over the running water, and the other one, which is smaller and narrower, that sits behind the D capture point and it's in line with a small flanking route that would allow players to loop right around the back of the map down to the river's edge so they can make their way over to the E capture point. And then lastly for now, a small Easter egg to finish, the umbrella and chairs from the Hamada map have made their way over to the Solomon Islands. This is the mark left by a certain developer, a good friend of mine, Johan Jensen, who is a level artist at DICE Stockholm, and he worked on the art for the Hamada map that launched with the base game of Battlefield 5. This is kind of his little signature that he puts on the maps that he's worked on. He's now also clearly worked on the Solomon Islands as well, so he's left his stamp here. Johan, Solomon Islands is a really good looking map. You should be proud of the work that you've done. Okay, so right now, those are the hidden details and Easter eggs that I've found within the Solomon Islands map for Battlefield 5, although I am led to believe, by a couple of different people, there are more things to discover here on this map. And it wouldn't be a DICE game without more Easter eggs to find, now would it? Thanks very much for watching this one today. Leave me a rating and a comment down below. It is always appreciated. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.